Today's podcast is about the imagination. But before I begin talking about imagination, I'm first going to play for you a track titled The Sea of Everything, composed by Ben Burns and played or performed on the album Do This Justice. So let's first hear what Ben has to say about imagination.
Here it is again, the empty canvas. It is one of the many nemeses of creativity, maybe the most powerful. Some poor souls have sat for days or weeks or even their entire lives, expecting happenstance or divine intervention to grant them direction or inspiration. Irrecoverable minutes slip by, spent drowning in a sea of everything that is possible. The sharks begin circling.
I think what Ben is saying here is that any type of artistic process, whether it's painting, music, writing, it all begins with the imagination. It all begins with the art. It all begins in the artist's imagination. And when the artist begins the process of creating, he or she is first staring at a blank canvas. It's his metaphor. It's Ben's metaphor for beginning any creative work. Now, the second metaphor that Ben uses is the ocean, or Ben calls it the sea of everything. And the way I'm interpreting what Ben is saying in the track is that the sea of everything is basically everything in the world, and that everything in the world could be used in the creative process. The third metaphor in Ben's track are swimming sharks. And what he's probably saying, what he's probably saying there, when he's using that metaphor, is that if the imagination is not sparked, if the artist's imagination, he or she is not inspired in some way, then the artist will be staring at a blank canvas. They will not be able to produce anything. They will not be able to go put anything down onto the canvas, and they can go no further in their work. They can't go into the more technical aspects of the art, and then finally on to polishing the art and finishing it. All because the artistic process starts with imagination, but the artist did not have a spark that inspired him or her to put anything onto the metaphorical canvas. I'll speak about imagination from a writing perspective because I really don't delve into any other type of art other than fiction, the written form of art. And, imagination is something that is individual, is an individual process that only the artist, only he or she is intimate with, meaning that, the artist must come up with some sort of idea, and there's no outside help really that can bring the artist's idea to something that's realized. There's no type of consensus, or there's no formula that's going to spark the artist's imagination. And what I mean by formula is something like if a writer were to try to follow some sort of point plot outline and come up with a story. I mean, that's formulaic. That's not an organic process, and a formulaic outline is only going to produce something that's less than inspiring. The artist probably wasn't inspired, and the reader is not going to be very inspired. They've probably seen something like, whatever's in the written work, the reader's probably already seen it before. So if imagination is individual to the writer, there must be some attributes, some writer's attributes that help and support the writer's imagination. And those attributes are, like curiosity, being receptive being receptive and empathetic to the world and the people in the world. And as I said before, curiosity, which is, the writer is inquisitive. They're very interested in the world. And they're interested in the people in the world. And therefore, they're also receptive to the people in the world. And, a writer has to be passionate. They have to, any artist has to be passionate. They have to avoid cynicism. And also, another attribute that a writer or any artist has is probably immediacy. When you're being creative and when you're wanting to spark your imagination, it's something immediate. The writer or the artist is living in the moment and fully experiencing everything that is going on around him or her. Now, it takes more than just imagination to write a story or to create any type of art. And in the case of writing, the writer has to provide a structure to what the imagination sparks. But imagination is still quite important in the creative process, in the writing process. And it's the imagination's initial sparks that really kickstart or begin to form an artist's work. So while there are several attributes that support an artist's imagination, there are inputs to the artist, to the individual, that the artist also uses to work with that to work with that spark, to work with that creative impulse. And what I mean by inputs to the artist are, things that the artist experiences every day. An artist experiences family situations. An artist may travel and see things different from his or her day-to-day perspective. A friend may provide inputs to the artist's imaginations. Even other stories and even dreams may help to spark the artist's imagination. So the components of an artist's imagination are human attributes and inputs or experiences. And again, the human attributes are curiosity, being receptive, passion, immediacy, and the inputs that the artist, he or she, experiences on a daily basis. This all adds up to an organic element to the artistic process, to creating an artistic work. And because it is organic, it may take time to develop an idea that you may want to put onto the metaphorical canvas that Ben Burns had mentioned in his track. And in fact, when Ben is talking about the shark swimming in the sea of everything, what Ben is saying there, of course, is that while the artist is staring at the canvas, searching for that spark, searching for that spark of in their imagination, there's nothing being produced. The sharks are swimming around, waiting to consume the artist, and therefore nothing is ever produced. There are ways to defeat the sharks. For a writer, there are entry points that can get a writer started, even if he or she doesn't feel like there's really any spark of imagination to begin the writing process. Let's listen further to The Sea of Everything and hear what more Ben has to say about imagination.
However, there is an escape. One note, a lone stroke of the brush, a solitary word triumphant on a page, is the only thing needed to start the crystallization process of an idea. With a single, simple act, the continuum of infinite possibilities collapses in on itself. Options considered mere moments ago now seem absurd and frivolous, foolish to waste time on. The first footprint on your canvas is paramount, as it defines where all other steps lead.
So when Ben is saying that the artist approaches the blank canvas and brushes one paint stroke on that empty canvas, or the writer writes a single word on a page, what Ben is really saying is that there is an entry point into creating a new work, that the imagination can be sparked through this entry point. Ways to do this are, for example, are to write what interests you, write what you know about. Or write what is personal to you. A third entry point is to write what's uncomfortable to you. If you shy away from a subject, but then you force yourself to write about that uncomfortable subject, you may discover something in that effort that suddenly sparks a story. And if those three ideas aren't appealing to you, you can always try just writing something random on a piece of paper, or sit down at a word processor and just begin typing away, just to see what turns up on the page. Imagination can be a strange and sometimes frightening thing. It's strange and frightening because it's an organic thing. There's really no formula to spark a new idea, to spark a new artistic work. It just has to evolve from within the writer or from within the artist. And then, like I said, that can be a strange and frightening thing. But when an artist is willing to be receptive to his or her own imagination, then the imaginative spark or the imaginative process becomes more familiar to the artist as time goes on and as more works are created by that artist. There's not much more I can say about the imagination, so I'm going to wrap this podcast up. But I hope I've given you something to think about. And when you consider your own imagination, consider your own attributes and consider the inputs that help to feed your imagination. And over time, I hope that your own imagination begins to grow and flourish, and that you too will be able to find your entry point and put down that one brush stroke, that single brush stroke to the empty or to the blank canvas, or that single word to the blank page, and you begin to create your own artistic works. So I'll end this podcast now. Keep reading and keep being human.